Okay, hello everyone. Welcome today to our first webinar of 2021. Very exciting, so Happy New Year to you all. Our first webinar this year is hassle-free inventory with the lovely Nick Ellis, who is our digital transformation consultant. And we've also got here Jig, who is my marketing colleague. So today we're talking all about not just inventory management, so that's just a really good example of how we can use SharePoint and the tools that we have in there, and kind of putting those building blocks together. There's other examples that you can use this for, such as taking bookings, recording sickness or holidays, so quite good for like HR functions. But we are going to use inventory management. So I will hand over to Nick, who will take you through the key steps that you'd need to put in place to automate this function. I hope that kind of explains it, Nick.
Yeah, a couple of things, probably a bit of housekeeping just to sort out before we do, and thanks, Tess. So there is a Q&A capability if people want to do Q&A, that's fine. There's a button there, I think, or there, one or the other. And also there's a slight lag because it's processing. So if you do ask a question and you don't get an immediate answer, you're not being ignored. We will pick them all up at the end, but there is a slight lag because of the way it goes through the cloud to get to you. So yes, inventory management, sort of picked on it because what we're really talking here is Microsoft Lists. Used to be, back in the day, it used to be part of, in fact it still is in many ways, part of SharePoint, but Microsoft has sort of extracted it out and made it its own thing. So SharePoint has been around since, I think, 2001, and Lists has always been part of it. People tend to see SharePoint as a document system first, foremost, and sometimes exclusively. And if you can come away from this webinar, or if you're watching later on the video, if you can come away from the video with one message, it is simply this: there's a lot more to SharePoint than just document storage. Not wishing to take anything away from the document storage, which is very good as well. So we're looking at inventory management here today because it's a good example of where you tend to have quite a lot of lists of information. You have some calculations and you have some processes. The classic kind of inventory process is, of course, you've got some stuff in a warehouse, your customers have some need, matching the two together, saying, I want to buy some stuff, have I got it in stock, can I ship it out to you? The way we're going to do that is essentially using three technologies, all of which are part of your standard Office license, unless you've got the really basic ones. But if you've got any kind of business standard, business premium, any of the numbered ones, E3, E5, A3, A5, all of those kind of Office packages, they include everything we're looking at here today. So there's no additional licensing required to do what we're going to be talking about. So we are looking at SharePoint lists. As I've said, we are looking at a little bit of PowerApps, not too much, not hopefully going to blow anybody's minds with any PowerApps scaring us, and a little bit of Power Automate just to drive a process forward. And there's only one of those in there, but it's a good example of the kind of things that can be done. So to start us going, the first thing I need to do is share my screen. And also, I've held my hands up now. I never managed to get through one of these without at least one occasion of going, wasn't expecting that. So there's always going to be one of those. We'll look out for it today. So what we're looking at here is a kind of stock inventory list. As you can see, is built. So we've got this little SharePoint site called Webinar Resources. Pretty clear what that is. We use it for providing resources for the webinars. I've built a stock inventory list, very basic IT type stuff of laptops and monitors. Just going through here, we've got a product name, product code, a location, unit cost, unit price, stock levels for the various items, and then some calculated fields on the end. So you can extend this out as far as you want to go. And in fact, what I'm going to do is basically just quickly build this again. I'll have to call it something different. But just to give you an idea of the relative ease of putting something like this together. So to create the basic inventory list, it is just a case of in your SharePoint, you're going to go to list, or if you prefer, in your Office portal, you can go to lists this way, and you will see a stack of pre-existing lists, and then you can go new. Now, I tend to start in SharePoint just because you have to remember to put it in the right place here and what have you, but you can do it this way if you prefer, and this way you get to choose a nice little icon for it as well. So I'm going to call this second inventory, just so that it's clear which one I was looking at. You can give it a little colour for your icons, there's a bit of customization, and hit create. And just stare at it while the progress goes around for a bit.
Thinking about
we'll get there eventually. Now, it is always going to throw out this column here called title. It's not really very useful, to be brutally honest with you, but Microsoft insists on it. I think essentially the software can't create the list without at least one column in it. So that's the column that they sort of default into it. But very quickly going through, you can see adding columns is really easy. Just drop down the add column section and tell it what sort of column you're adding. So what we mean here is, if you think of it in terms of, if you're asking somebody a question, what format roughly are you expecting the date to come, the answer to come back in? And the reason I said date was because I was jumping ahead to the next sentence. So if I were to say to Tess or to Jig, what's your date of birth? Realistically, the answer that I'm going to expect back is going to be a date. So a single line of text. I could put it in there. I could write whatever it is. 25th of January, 60, just to be rude. You could put it in there. The problem with that is you can't do any calculations against that. So if you just write a date, it doesn't know it's a date. If you wanted to be able to say something like shipping dates, for example, is a really good example. We take the order, we guarantee to ship within 3 days. So if you want to calculate what today plus 3 days is, it has to know that it's a date that it's doing a calculation. Similarly, choice, we touched a little bit on choice in the other one in terms of drop down lists or radio buttons. I'll talk a bit about the difference between those in a minute. And so on. Obviously, single line of text, that's 255 characters. Think of it as a tweet. It's not quite as long as a tweet, but think of it at that level. Multiple lines of text, I believe, is 10,000 characters by default. A person column is an interesting one. So the person column is going to be a drop-down selection. And any purists watching this will say, no, it's not. It's a combo box, and that is true. But it's a selection of all the people in your business, all the people who have got licenses on your Microsoft tenant. That's who's going to be in that person box, and you can select one or more. I'm going to assume I don't need to explain what a number is. Yes, no. Well, actually, a number, the only thing I will say with numbers is that you do have to specify, is it a whole number or do you want decimals? You can, because some things like, so with inventory, certainly with the examples we've used, desktop, laptop, or what have you, it's going to be whole numbers. Nobody's ever going to buy half a laptop. So you've got to think about that, you know, and if you tell it that now, it makes it easier for any processing and maths and all that stuff later.
I suppose if you were using it for like one of the other examples, like holidays or sickness days or something.
Well, sickness, yes.
half a day or something.
Half a day, or if you're I don't know, if you're selling things by the ton, and you might want to sell half a ton or a quarter of a ton, you know. So there are definitely occasions where you're going to want decimals, and there are other occasions where you'll say, no, I'm never going to sell half a laptop, so it's always going to be a whole number. Yes and no are what they are. Hyperlink is what they are. Currency, obviously extremely useful in this scenario. We'll get into that a little bit. Location, I'm going to be honest, I don't use the location very much, mainly because of GDPR concerns. If there are business uses for location, fine. I tend to discourage using it about individuals because you can cause problems later. It's actually illegal in Germany. There you go, there's a bit of fact for you. It's illegal in Germany for a company to store information about the location of its employees. Images, you can store image files, they're kind of like attachments on there, and then there are some other ones as well that we'll get into. So actually creating a column is really easy. You just sort of say, so we need a product name. I've already got it in my drop down list. Look, product name, you specify. If you've hit the wrong thing here, you get the chance to go, oh no, that's not what I meant. You don't have to start again from scratch. You can set a default value, you can set calculated values. Going to look at calculated values for currencies. One thing to remember, which is quite important, is this column here. Require that it contains information. So you can kind of set a minimum where it won't even enable the save button unless those columns have been populated, if that makes sense. So, and you see this quite commonly in web forms where you go along to a website and says, no, you can't submit, you haven't told us, you know, the various pieces of information we need. So we're going to say, yes, we definitely need a product name. And as you can see, it just adds it straight in there. So, and I won't do the whole thing, but I'll give you a quick, so I might give it a product code. Yeah, got to do that, and so on. Now, the interesting ones, where it gets a bit more interesting than plain text. So choice, for example, you see you get these nice coloured things. So I suggested having just said what I was saying, a location one, slightly different in terms of these are fixed known locations to the business rather than a location tracking an individual. So, and I think I put office and I put warehouse, and supplier held, and you know, you can just keep adding more and more. So maybe we've got a warehouse 2 somewhere, and then if you want, you can give them different colors and so on. I don't want to be dismissive of formatting, but that is, you know, it is what it is. You can pick a color and there you go.
That'd be good if you have several different shops. Or
yeah, different branches, different. I mean, obviously, we being in Kent, there's a lot of agriculture around here, so different farms in the business. But you could also have choices in terms of they want the laptop. Do they also want a bag? Yes, no. That kind of thing. Do they also, you know, what package? Funnily enough, we've just been talking about custom build PCs before this because we're tech nerds, and you know, those kind of choices and options are useful there. Again, I would suggest consider does it have to be filled in with something in order to pass muster? Can you have multiple? Now that wouldn't make sense in this scenario. You know, it's either going to be there or there or there or there. It's not, a thing can't be in multiple places unless you want to get into quantum physics. So, but there are some scenarios again where maybe you can have multiple options. You say, I want this and this, you know. And then do you want to display it as a drop down, which looks like that is a drop down, or do you want it displayed as radio buttons? It's not going to show you those radio buttons here. I'll show you in a second. So if I just do a new now, that is your radio buttons. The point of radio buttons is it can only be one at a time. So as you select from one, so you may have noticed that when I said it's radio buttons, it actually disabled the allow multiple selections. But if I switch it to drop down, then you can have multiple selections. It's a thing. Currency, we'll do a quick bit on currency. So let's just say cost. Obviously you have to tell it what currency. It's unfortunately not clever enough to work out that we're all, to start from what country we're in. As is the way of the world, it starts with the assumption that you're American, and because that's what they do, isn't it? Again, do you want to require? Let's talk a little bit about enforce unique values. That is enforcing unique values down the column. So tread very carefully with that. So, for example, if I ticked that and I entered one that had I don't know what we're looking at cost, had a cost of £300. It would not let me add anything else ever again that had a cost of £300 because it would be saying that's unique in that column. It's not unique that way, it's unique that way.
Okay.
So just be careful with your unique values. And cases where you might use that, barcodes, asset tagging, you can't have two assets with the same asset tag, for example, or ticket numbers, those kind of things. It's very useful. Anyway, so we're going to have a currency value there.
In terms of the currency,
yes.
If you had, so you were buying your products from America, so your unit price is in dollars, but then obviously you're selling them in pounds sterling.
Yeah.
It cope with. Can you add in
an exchange?
An exchange rate. Thank you, Jig. An exchange rate, or do you have to work it out before you'd put it in there?
Well, that is an interesting scenario. So yes, you could. Is the short answer. I'm tempted to say yes, you could and move on. But what I would suggest you would probably do is have another list somewhere else that had all the currencies you deal with, and the exchange rate, and then you'd have a bit of automation in the background that went and looked it up. However, just because you asked, and it's more interesting than the calculation I was going to do, I will. I'll put this one in. So we're going to have a number. Now you'll see a number is going to be an automatic number of decimal places, but let's say we want to choose down to I think 3 is pretty much the standard for exchange rates, and then we may well then want to have a calculated column. So calculated columns are a bit more complex, so we have to go down to more. It's going to get a lot less pretty now, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. Yeah. But so if we were to say so we were in pounds, so we wanted to say cost times the exchange rate, and then that is going to be a currency output, and maybe we're going to say that is US dollars. So we're starting in pounds and we're converting to US dollars. So when I create one of these, you will see that converted price column that I've just had is not here. It's here, but it's not here because you can't fill it in. It's a calculation.
Okay.
Once you've filled all that in, then it will work out for you and display it.
Title field, I'll just populate with the word title. Product is desktop. Product code 1234. Location is in the warehouse. Cost is 300, and the exchange rate on it is 1.2. Well, let's say let's use all the values we've got. 1.254. You'll see there it will calculate that for you. What I've done on the other one. So if you had a lookup elsewhere, is the point. You wouldn't want to store it here. You'd have a lookup elsewhere of what the rates are, and then you
and then it automatically work it out.
Yeah.
So you'd have dynamic prices there.
You can have dynamic prices that are responding to. Most businesses, I think, tend to set their exchange rates on a monthly or quarterly basis, because if you actually unless you're financial, you're foreign exchange trading, you don't really need that level of accuracy unless there was a massive disaster. So back on here, we've used that basic same idea to say, okay, stock times unit cost equals the total cost, stock times unit price equals the total price, and then total price minus total cost equals the margin available. And then, so it's a bit like a spreadsheet in that respect. So if I was to change that stock to 5, say, when we come back to here, you'll see those numbers have gone down immediately. It's a really simple way of doing it. It's really easy to share this into Teams. You can just embed that straight into Teams and share it with the people who are responsible for managing such things. And I'll just quickly show you how to do that, and then we'll move on to the next part.
Amazing.
In fact, probably the easiest way to do this would be to go down here and add a team in. That will create the team for us, called Webinar Resources. And then when this loads, Teams, there's that Webinar Resources team. And I can add in quite quickly that list into Teams. Lists.
Amazing.
First, you have to add the app, and then it will say which list do you want me to show. Add an existing list. Stock inventory. So you don't have to be tied into the SharePoint view. See, there you go. So it presents it nicely in Teams. That's your working environment all the time, and then even to the extent that you can obviously have the usual features of, you know, chat grid down the side and copying it around, sharing it, and so on. So really nice, quick way of maintaining an inventory that everybody who needs to see it can see really easily and update and access. Now, the next part is that, of course, at some point you're going to want to sell the stuff that's on your inventory. So have a look at that. Now,
yeah.
Everything you're looking at here, I quite often say this on the webinars and the videos, everything that you're looking at here has been created today. And the reason that I say that is not, as you might think, because I'm incredibly feckless and forget to do things. Heaven forbid. The reason that I say that is to point out that we're not talking here about some massive project. This isn't a huge software project to create this. I concede I do this all day, every day, or most of the time, every day. And I'm an enthusiast, if you will. Sometimes I do it at the weekends just for fun, believe it or not. So I do have my own Microsoft tenant on which I maintain a full inventory of this collection of books, mainly for insurance purposes. So I am an enthusiast in that sense. So so obviously I arrive with, you know, I'm not suggesting that everybody would be able to do all of this in a day, but it's not some massive project where you've got huge capital investment. Once you've got your licenses, if you're willing to have a play around with it, you can get to this fairly quickly. Now, what we've done here is, again, it's just another list. You can see it's very pared down. It's just a customer name, an address, what product, and a quantity. Which I note that one hasn't saved the products. We'll see if that might be the glitch. Now the form here, this is where we get into the PowerApps. So if you remember on the other one, it was a very simple, very sort of kind of, that's the bog standard SharePoint form, right? What I've done here on the sales one is I've actually created a PowerApps form that sits in there, and then within that you can do all sorts of things. You can pretty much bring the whole world of office development straight into your SharePoint form if you so wish. All I've really done is create the form. There's a reason why I've chosen to do that though. So if I were to say I could even choose that. Is it going to fill it in? Look at that. It's even going to fill it in carefully for me because it's identified the field names in there. So I'm going to fill all that in with the kind of customer information. Now, if I say that I want it to be a laptop, now the things that you can do with PowerApps that you can't do with standard SharePoint is something like, he says, testing it, that. So to actually start going away and looking at the data and going, does that make sense? Is that right? You know, to be able to say, for example, well, you're trying to sell more than we've got, don't do that. Or you're trying to sell more than we've got, therefore, you know, you might want to say, therefore, I'm going to automatically go and place an order for some more from our suppliers, or whatever it might be. So you can start to build processes and a richer user experience, as they say, into there. Now, when I press submit, and I'm going to be honest, the downside of saying everything here is built today is that not all of it is as tested as we might like. That is going to trigger, that is going to save this row, and then it's going to trigger this. And this is a flow. So this is the Power Automate bit. So this is going to say, okay, so when the item is created in the list, go and get it, find out what it is and get the inventory for it. And then this one, populate a Word template. So I've got a Word template, which is actually a shipping label. It's very, very basic, but it serves for demonstration. So this gets the information that was put into the list and populates a shipping label.
Wow.
That's quite cool.
Thought you'd like that one.
I like that.
It then attaches that shipping label as an attachment to the sale record.
Okay.
So you know where to find it. And then subtracts, this is a bit, we get into codey stuff here, but it subtracts the quantity sold from the stock in the inventory. Or, and I'm open to this possibility, it doesn't. That is possible as well, mainly because I know that it's not actually, there seemed to be a problem with it saving back the product selected. So we need to change that to 1, just to give it an amount that it can actually sell, and then hit submit. Now we know one of the things, there you go, so it's fed back, I've logged that with a sale. It doesn't refresh this screen, which is slightly,
That's annoying, isn't it?
yeah, I wish it did. That's why I put in that message to say I have saved it, honest, and hit cancel. There you go, it hasn't actually added the product. Now I have a feeling, therefore, it probably hasn't fired this flow, or if it has, it's failed. Yeah, I had a feeling that might have been the case. So I'm not going to linger too much on that.
So if you were to do that, then you could add in an automated message that flags you've got no stock, or you've got less than 10 of something, or anything like that into that flow.
You could. It's frustrating that doesn't quite work, but never mind. Yeah, you could do that. You could, one that I've seen is discount levels. So you could say, if somebody, maybe you've got an account manager who gets a bit creative with the pricing, you can build in a, right, before I go and do anything, I'm going to go and get approval from the next level of authority because we've gone above the discount levels. And obviously you can trigger off things like confirmation emails to the customer. Yep, we've got your order, all that kind of stuff. And if you could build out a sales order from this that allowed people to say, right, and now it's shipped, and then that fires an email and so on. So yeah, that is essentially that's the full process. So what we've done, you build your basic data set into SharePoint. You can, as we've seen, but you relate the data sets together. So you say, here's a set of data which is my inventory. Here's another set of data which is my sales, and they are related together by the products and the location, so and stock levels and so on, and then we can build processes out of that. Now, I would strongly recommend that the way for a real business, I mean, we've obviously built this in our demo environment, the way for a real business to approach this is to map all of that out in detail first before going to SharePoint, or before going to any development platform, frankly. So you can tie yourself in knots if you're not careful by starting with the development. So I would strongly recommend map out what is the process. Then you go along the process, and that will sort of tell you the pieces of information you need. So if in your process you've got what happens when we sell more than we've got, well, the first, in order to establish that, you need to know how much are you selling, how much have you got. That starts to lead you towards what that data structure should look like. So I always, back when humans were allowed near each other, I used to turn up with a roll of paper. You can do it remotely. I've done some remotely as well. But you do a big exercise. You map it all out. You work out, okay, in order for this field, what data do I need? What, and so on. That tells you how to build your lists, and then the process diagram itself tells you, okay, so at this stage I need it to do this, I need it to do this, I need it to do this. I would suggest most inventory and sales coupling type things you could probably get through a process in a week. I know it's a bit bold of me because I haven't seen them, and there's always going to be one that is much more complicated, and I didn't think of that. But the actual development part is really quick and straightforward.
So you can build an entire back-end sales system, essentially.
Well, you could, yeah. I mean, there is a scalability issue in as much as, so I think this is quite suitable for businesses of up to, say, 40 or 50 people, or teams of up to 40 or 50 people, who are doing transactions on the order of a few hundred a month.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you're doing more than that, you need to go for something a bit more robust. And the something a bit more robust I think you should probably be thinking about is Dynamics. So there is a whole shipping inventory capability in Dynamics, and that also has abilities like it can connect to Business Central, so it can feed that sales data directly into your purchase ledger and so on. So I think once you get to a certain scale, it does have its limitations. There are different tools for different size businesses. I wouldn't want to run a business that was doing transactions even every few minutes, let alone every few seconds on this platform. Yeah. You've got to be open to the scaling need. But if you're transacting at that kind of speed, you're likely to also have the
e-commerce website.
The e-commerce website connections, hopefully the robustness of processes, so it would be possible to migrate. It's very unlikely that a business like that is currently working out of a paper diary.
Yeah.
Well, not successfully if they're doing transactions per second, put it that way. So I'm done. That's everything done.
Amazing.
I'm off now.
Okay. Bye.
Any questions? Thank you very much for watching and joining us today. We hope you learned a lot and can now go away and use SharePoint for your inventory management or whatever you may use it for. If you do need any help, you can always get in touch with us. So go to our website, selecttechnology.co.uk, and you can find our contact details if you need any help setting something up like this for your business. So thank you from me, Tess, Jig, and a big thank you to Nick for taking us through that today.